This is JD and Christina Manier with Concerted Commandos radio show here at CPAC 2020 in beautiful and sunny Orlando. And our next guest is a friend, and I think we're saving the best for last, David Tice, film producer of Grid Down, Power Up. And David, welcome to Concerted Commando radio show.
Well, so glad to be with both of you guys. Love your show, and you guys are true patriots for what you're doing for the country, and your listeners are very lucky to have found you.
Oh, we're lucky to have found you, and so is America.
Yes.
And we're going to get right into it, because you are working with a film that's been in production many years.
Yeah.
It's a documentary on the vulnerability of America's power grid. And start right in at this point right now.
Right.
As Russia using cyber warfare against the Ukrainians. And 60 Minutes getting ready to air something here tonight with some people that are in your movie. This is very serious for the American people, and they're going to get it from the really best producer we know on this issue.
Well, thank you, JD. I mean, we're really excited about this film. This is a project later in life for me. It's a passion project because I care a lot about my kids and my grandkids. I want them to enjoy the same life that I've been able to experience. Frankly, there's been some warriors talking about grid protection for a long time, but frankly, it hasn't gotten the traction that it should have had. And Donald Trump did a lot a couple years ago with an executive order that was passed into a legislation. However, unfortunately, we still have not had the follow-through. We have not had the follow-through inside the agencies. And frankly, the American people need to be aware of this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of frustrated warriors about grid protection because nothing has ever gotten done.
Right.
We've had some legislation, but most often it just gets stalled inside the committees. If any legislation is passed, it's, stopped inside the agencies. We need the American people to stand up and say, darn it, we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
We deserve this.
Yeah.
This is fixable. And this movie is going to convert from a movie into a movement.
Yeah.
And we've created a Energy Security Council that's going to allow us to follow through and to be able to collaborate and work with vendors and work with various legislators about what's worked in the past and what can work going forward, and crafting the best parts of legislation and regulation. This is a massive project, and frankly, this should be a movement parallel to what we had with Newt Gingrich and what we had with the Tea Party movement.
Well, amen on that. And,
I agree.
Yes. He's peeling back the onion, and I think your film, because we've been privy to see some of this, it's really the problems with the electric grid not being hardened in America for dummies. Yeah. It's a beautiful way of letting the American people know what the problem has been for 40 years, why it's there, but you have solutions. And go ahead and please talk about some of these solutions.
Well, some of the solutions is we have a part in the film where we say for grid security, where's Waldo? Who's in charge? And essentially, no one's really in charge. And there's so much finger pointing between Homeland Security, Department of Energy, Defense Department. The utilities are kind of responsible for this, but frankly, they would rather think about warming up your pizza oven, rather than thinking about North Korea.
That's true.
Frankly, they don't really think, it falls under their purview. And so what we need is, right now we have FERC regulating, but essentially they have handed that off to NERC. And most of that regulation comes from utility executives. And so frankly, it's a little bit of the fox guard in the hen house. So we believe there needs to be a grid security czar appointed by the president, cabinet level official that reports to the American public. We need better, stronger regulation of the utilities. We need a massive effort to move towards microgrid solutions. We need direct reporting to the public. We need backup generators stored on site. We need a system whereby the generation power is provided with backup with fuel supply, on site rather than having to have it all come in.
Yes.
So those are just a few of our proposed solutions. We need people. We need the utilities to be responsible for grid security.
Yeah.
And there's talk about more of a Sarbanes-Oxley, where CEOs of these companies need to be under oath, that they've signed that they are responsible for all the measures done to have a protected grid. And if they're not, they're responsible for civil and criminal penalties.
Yeah. What do you think about bringing in more of awareness to our legislators so they can step up to the plate? And do you think they're going to be able to do that?
Well, so there's state legislation and there's federal legislation.
Right.
And frankly, there needs to be legislation at both levels. And one of the things that comes from this film is you just go to the website, a few clicks of your mouse, you put in your home address, you will have 8 letters written to your 2 U.S. senators, your U.S. congressmen, your 2 state legislators, your FEMA emergency director, your chairman of your state utility commission, as well as your adjutant general, your National Guard. And all these are custom tailored letters telling these people that we're mad as hell, we're not going to take this anymore, this has got to be fixed.
Wow.
You live in Texas.
Yes.
You've experienced some of the pain of not having a real secure grid.
That's right.
In the Lone Star State.
Right.
But so have the people in California.
Yeah.
But you document all these times, even in the last few decades, where it's been ravaging on the American people when the grid's gone down.
Sure.
Exactly. It's a great point, JD. But one thing that the film does is it differentiates difference between a grid interruption and the grid truly being down. And even though the grid was down for a week or so in Texas, and a lot of people had hardship, and the cost to the economy was estimated between $60 billion and $200 billion.
Wow.
We lost 250 Texans who died. But if we have the grid being out, it's the type of devastation and the type of loss that is in a different stratosphere.
Sure.
And we point that out in the movie, and therefore sometimes people even get complacent about grid being interrupted because it always comes back. And if it's regional, then there's a cavalry. People from California and from Louisiana can send in food, etc. But if the grid is down nationally for 6 months, I mean, none of us can even, guess at how bad that would be.
Yeah.
I mean, the Congressional EMP Commission came out and estimated between 75% and 90% of Americans would die. And therefore, neighbors would be coming to each other's house and breaking into that house for food.
Wow.
You can't imagine if your 8-year-old daughter, didn't have any water on like the 7th day, because the water system didn't work.
Right.
You can't imagine. So, frankly, sometimes Texas and California outages tell us a little bit, but they don't even get in the stratosphere of what we might be doing.
You mentioned the Congressional Commission, almost 2 decades in existence, our nation's top experts, and the world's top experts on grid security, all working tirelessly, in essence, to sound the horn. America, watch out! If this happens, it's going to be more devastating than anything we've ever experienced on steroids, times 10, times 100, times 1,000.
Right.
And yet it's that close. It's that close. We're that vulnerable.
Yeah.
And but thank God you provide solutions, and it's very encouraging because I want the audience to know your film is not doom and gloom.
No, it's not, and that's what makes it so palatable to everybody, so they can respond to this film and not just say, "Wow, we've heard the bad news," but then you also bring in the good news with the solutions.
Well, thank you, and let's talk to that. Essentially, the viewer goes on a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
Essentially, at first there's surprise, and then there is, there is disbelief, and then there is fear, and then there is despair, and then there is outrage, and then there can be complete despair, and then some people, just want to go back to drinking their Chardonnay.
Absolutely.
Some people, do want to, and I follow the adage, prepare for the worst, hope for the best, leave God for the rest.
There you go.
But even those that are thinking about leave it to God for the rest, which I know the three at this table believe in, you should potentially prepare for the worst. And therefore, and frankly, God gives us the tools by which we should, try to prevent this from happening.
Absolutely.
And we should try to fix this at a state level and a federal level and even a community level. And so all that, should be, addressed.
I agree.
And this issue's been costed.
Yeah.
And we're here in sunny Florida where they have a hurricane season.
Yeah,
and,
they do.
And the costs and the recommendations you provide in this film and how to get with the experts benefit Floridians in such a huge way. The cost recovery is unbelievable. I mean, there's hundreds of billions of dollars lost during hurricane season when the power's out for a few days or a week or two in the Panhandle or down in Miami and up and down the wonderful state of Florida. Yet this saves all the pain.
That's right. It does. I agree.
That has been a pushback for years by many naysayers. Oh, it's going to cost too much to harden the grid. Yeah. You provide answers and prove that this is very doable.
Yes, so to follow on one point, I kind of lost my train of thought as far as the range of emotions. At the end, we have the emotion we're trying to evoke is optimism. And we're saying what a great country we have and how we've had our back to the wall before. And we are American, and failure is not an option.
Good.
And we built a national highway system when we needed it. We ended up, overcoming racial segregation with a massive movement, catalyzed by the Million Man March, Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And therefore, we've done this in the past. And therefore, if we all get together and if we all fight for this, one of the things that comes from the film is 20% of proceeds are going to go to 501c3 organizations that have a history of protecting the grid. And I call these citizens on-the-ground warriors that are essentially guys like Tommy Waller and Mike Mabee and Frank Gaffney and Hank Cooper. And these individuals have fought tirelessly. And if
and Dr. Peter Pry.
Dr. Peter Pry, oh my gosh, Dr. Peter Pry is the man who has put all this, together. An amazing man, amazing patriot. And so if these gentlemen are funded, and ladies, Mary Lasky, they will be able to fight to make sure we have good legislation, good regulation, stand up against the bureaucracy inside the agencies, and make this happen.
Christina, you grew up in Hollywood. You've seen thousands of films in your day. But this documentary in our nation's security, I think you're going to rank this as numero uno.
I believe that, and it's like I said, even with people that are listening to it or hearing about it for the first time in CPAC, how do you think this being your first time in CPAC is going to give an impact to this movie?
I think literally just a few days ago, I decided to start the groundswell where I kind of held back a little bit, but because of the 60 Minutes piece that was coming, and given the invasion of the Ukraine that's going on in Russia right now, we need to start talking about this. The film is set for, we're hoping for a soft launch May 1st with a hard launch at Freedom Fest July 15th.
Well, Dave, we were talking about the good things coming forth from this film and talk about, well, I think 60 Minutes is going to be a big plug for your project with Mike Mabee tonight.
Yeah, it certainly is. I understand this segment's been in progress for a while. Mike Mabey, who plays a big role in our film, is kind of a star of the show, from what I understand. I know they talk a lot about the Metcalf attack in 2013 and our risk of physical attack. I understand they also will be talking about purchasing transformers from China.
Big issue
for that.
Yeah.
So big issue there about transformers coming from China is we have in the film Jennifer Granholm, who's the current Secretary of Energy under Joe Biden.
Yes.
She was asked on the Sunday morning talk show about if our adversaries are currently inside the grid, which means they potentially have control over the grid and therefore could essentially shut down our power. And she responded, yes, they can.
Wow.
And I think the film identifies those adversaries, and it needs to be told to our audience. The adversaries were identified as Russian, and I think that'll set well. And with all of our listeners, it's going to perk up our ears. We've got to pay attention to this issue, which can be solved thanks to Dave and your film and all the people behind this. This is America's best minds that have funneled up to make a film to warn the American people, and then not only warn them, but say, we have these solutions.
So let's talk a little bit about the solution set and the fact that this C-suite Energy Security Council.
Yeah.
So this will provide the infrastructure and organization by which people can get together and collaborate and work with vendors, and legislators can figure out what's worked in the past and, be able to piggyback off of other success stories and other drafting of legislation and figure out what didn't work in the past. So I'm very excited about that. Working with organizations like FRA, Florida Republican Assemblies. JD has been a part of that. Also, the Indiana group of assembly. Then there's the National Federation of Republican Assemblies that are all in because grid security has been a big issue for those groups. And this is truly a bipartisan issue.
That's what
we want Democrats, we want liberals, we want independents, we want moderates, because it all comes down to protecting society. And therefore, this certainly is not a conservative issue.
Right. Well, it's a survival, I believe, movement, that every single human being is having to look at right now.
Right.
And we need to have the understanding of that and not see that this is just like, you put a tin hat on and watch out for the solar flares with the binocular to see if we're going to have the sky come down on us. It's not anything like this. This is in our backyard. And if we don't do anything about it, it'll be in our front yard.
Exactly. In terms of solutions, there's a couple other solutions I didn't really mention. One of which there should be military grade standards for our substations, such that they are protected. Essentially, our military has protected our warfare apparatus. However, our civilian infrastructure has not been protected to the same degree.
And ladies and gentlemen, 97% of the military bases in America get their electricity from the civilian grid. So it's wonderful that the silos are hardened and the control command centers are hardened against virtually anything to take. But what happens about the power generation upstream? How do you keep it the power on if it's knocked out at Hoover Dam? If it's knocked out around the nation. So this is a tremendous film.
Another thing that needs to be done is there is current hardware out there. Essentially, our substations are one of the most vulnerable, and our substations can be hardened and protected. And there is technology out there. Cyprotech is a product that came out of CPS Energy and Siemens, that we could utilize that and start rolling it out with substations today. The other thing that we say in our film is that we believe instead of getting utilities to pay for this and to have it go through the rate mechanisms, this should be paid for by the government. And even though I'm a fiscal conservative, I'm not about trying to put additional, items in our fiscal checkbook. This is something that's so important.
Yes.
And it's essentially coming down to either ratepayers or taxpayers. And frankly, this can be a taxpayer issue. We don't need to fight utilities anymore. Let's get them on our side and let's get this fixed.
Well, and this is not a $1 trillion bill. Infrastructure bill. This is infrastructure for America, the highest priority, and the returns are enormous. It pays for itself. It pays for itself for all the times the grid goes down in Texas, in Florida, and elsewhere, and the potential for it going down across the nation. This can be solved.
Yes, it can.
Pennies on the dollar.
There you go.
Dave, we want to thank you for coming on the Concerted Commander Radio Show, and we're going to have you back because this is a journey together for the American people, and the solutions are coming.
So I want to brag on JD a little bit. So JD has been truly a advocate for grid protection and EMP protection for multiple years and serves on a committee, fighting for this particular issue. And, we're truly lucky to have him running this show with Christina and bringing conservative views to America. But JD has truly been a on-the-ground warrior for this for close to a decade now.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, and it's coming to fruition.
Yes. So anyway, I really look forward to being on this program going forward. And tune in to 60 Minutes tonight. Please visit griddownpowerup.com. Tell your friends. You can see teasers. The film is coming soon. We're going to utilize a pay it forward model for distribution. But I think that join the movement. We're going to have this Energy Security Council where we need involved citizens and on-the-ground warriors there. That we also have, a belief that at the local level, at the city level, at the county level, this should be addressed. Patriot Hank Cooper has essentially gotten, a little bit disenchanted with any federal type of solution and believes that this needs to be handled at a local level. So get to your city councilman, your mayor, and we're going to have, materials such that we will give you a head start on what you need to do. There's a couple of examples that we cover in the film. The San Antonio Joint Air Force Base and then Rock Hill, South Carolina have both worked on projects to be able to protect their individual communities. And therefore, local areas need to stand up and get started on this as well.
Well, David, thank you for coming on the Concerted Commandos radio show here at CPAC 2022 in Orlando. God bless. And ladies and gentlemen, coming to a power grid near you, Dave Tice film, Grid Down, Power Up.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.